No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 119. Please click and subscribe to our brand new independent news source. Turn on the notification bell, then you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Breaking right now, Elon Musk backs Reform UK. The richest man in the world has just met, or these pictures have just been released at least, with the new Reform UK treasurer Nick Candy and leader Nigel Farage sending the left and the establishment into a tailspin. Because, of course, they're now trying to claim that Reform UK and Farage is some sort of egregious threat to democracy, not Slippery Starmer himself, who is actually fast turning the UK into a banana republic with this chilling threat to the upcoming local elections, where he is set to be totally hammered.
Yesterday, a former Labour deputy leader referenced my party as a threat to democracy. Now, I'm sure that was a cute turn of phrase for television, but given the framework you've laid out for elections next year to be gained so easily, isn't the real threat here potentially the Labour Party?
Yeah.
Also coming up on the show today, Humza Useless quits in a flurry of lies.
You're stepping back from Scottish frontline politics.
Frontline politics altogether.
What is it like to feud with the world's richest man? And how worried are you that he's going to be in a position of a lot of power in the Trump administration?
He's typical of these people who demand free speech and then are one of the first to attempt to shut it down when it's views that he does not like. Elon Musk, I said at the time, was one of the most dangerous men on the planet. Look, I don't want to leave Scotland, but ultimately if I take my former First Minister hat off and put on the most important hat, which is that of a father, can I say my children will be safe in this country? Absolutely, for simply being who they are. And I don't think I can definitively say yes to that.
Do you believe this government, the UK government, the Labour government of Sir Keir Starmer and David Lammy and others, do you believe this government is complicit in Israel's genocide in Gaza?
Yes.
Father Calvin Robinson will analyse that and the UK's decline under Two Tier Keir in just a moment. Then we'll look at the plot within Labour to replace Starmer as the party descends into civil war. And I'll show you the astonishing clash between Annunziata Rees Mogg and the vile Marina Purkiss on Jeremy Vine. Then, in the uncancelled after show, Angela Levin reveals the growing storm over Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Christmas card with claims it's been digitally manipulated. Remember, the uncancelled after show now broadcast exclusively daily and on demand on my Substack, which you can Google or get to right now by visiting www.outspoken.live. Please subscribe to a monthly paid membership for access to the after show, my exclusive reporting and columns, our live chats on the Substack app, and the chance to join a thriving community. Remember, it's a safe space free of censorship, but it's also totally free to sign up if you want. www.outspoken.live. The most important thing is that we are together in this. But now, let's go. It's a picture which is going to send a chill through not just the Labour Party, but also the British establishment. Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, at Trump's Mar-a-Lago, alongside Nick Candy, his billionaire new treasurer, and Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, discussing how the Tesla and ex-mogul can make Farage British Prime Minister. It's quite extraordinary when you think about the help that Musk gave to Donald Trump. So, of course, as a result of the growing fear of Reform UK, and you'll remember it was me in June who promised, or at least predicted, that Nigel Farage would be Prime Minister by 2029. So the panic and terror within the left and the establishment is now ratcheting up a gear. And I think my main message to you today is just remember that they are always everything that they accuse us of being. Because just as Starmer turns Britain into some sort of banana republic, the Labour and Tory establishment have a new narrative, about Nigel. Reform UK, they say, is somehow a threat to democracy, even though it's their parties who tried to overturn the biggest democratic vote in British history in Brexit, or their party, in the case of the Conservatives, who actually undermined why we voted to leave by opening the doors up to mass immigration. Oh, and by the way, Farage will also bankrupt us and lead us into forever wars, even though that's exactly what both those parties have done. But this is the very clear message being delivered by grandees from both parties. So first, Labour's Harriet Harman on Sly News. Where else?
They came second in 89 seats to Labour. How worried should the party be about the threat, or the challenge, I should say, from Farage?
Well, I think people should be very concerned about reform, because they're not just a threat to individual parties, but I actually think they're a threat to democracy, because they are offering easy
answers, she says. Hardly. As Nigel put it, the Labour Party are now using the same threat to democracy line that the Democrats used about Trump. Look how that worked for them. But now the Conservatives are following that same playbook. The former Tory chairman, Lord Patten, establishment through and through. Here he is on the Labour Broadcasting Company.
I don't put anything past Mr. Farage and his colleagues. I think they do represent a threat to democracy and to good government in this country. I don't think I take him as seriously as some people do, because he's so absurdly the sort of the loudmouth in the saloon bar that you leave the saloon bar in order to avoid listening to. But you know, there won't be an issue likely to get on the front page of a popular newspaper which he won't have taken up in some way or other. But I think that to favour a government whose views on foreign policy, if implemented, would have us at war, whose views on the economy are ridiculous and would completely bankrupt us rather than just partially bankrupt us.
What utter bollocks. Farage, like Trump, will be all about avoiding wars at any cost. As Superwoman Suala's hubby and new Reform UK signing Rael Braverman put it, when will the establishment realise that smearing reform as a threat to democracy is a tired, desperate tactic? Enough hemorrhaging. Let's have real debate, not recycled scare stories. They're scared because reform challenges the two-party status quo and their grip on power. My prediction, this rhetoric will only get worse and more neurotic in the coming years. This is where the real battle lies, challenging their fearmongering and exposing the truth. But indeed, let me be clear with you. The only real threat to British democracy is this Labour government, which is now refusing to confirm that local elections will take place in growing Farage hotspots like Essex, Hertfordshire, Kent, Lancashire and Sussex next year, just as they are set to be utterly annihilated by a surging Reform UK. So here's the local government minister, Jim McMahon, failing to confirm that those elections will indeed go ahead.
21 county councils in England and 10 unitary authorities as well, all up for election in May. Will every one of those elections go ahead, Minister?
So more details will follow later on. I'll be making a statement in Parliament this afternoon that will set out the detail of that. But this is an open invitation.
So they won't be then, Minister?
But it's an open invitation for councillors who want to be part of an early tranche of reorganisation and devolution.
Why aren't they all going ahead?
And I would say, even before the white paper has been published,
maybe there's a problem with the line. Why aren't they going ahead, Minister?
Well, at the moment, the assumption is that elections are going ahead. However, it's usual in a process of reorganisation that when a council makes a request for reorganisation, that if there are elections taking place to a council that it essentially won't exist within the term of those elections, then you hold off the elections and you elect to a shadow body, and the shadow body basically is a form of the new councils that will follow.
Farage described that as an act of desperate government and compared Starmer to a third world dictator. And Reform chairman Zia Youssef said he was governing like a despot. Now, I've been saying that for months, actually, given Starmer is locking up political prisoners for tweets, Facebook posts or citizen journalism. Reform UK made little headway on the issue in Parliament either.
Yesterday, a former Labour deputy leader referenced my party as a threat to democracy. Now, I'm sure that was a cute turn of phrase for television, but given the framework you've laid out for elections next year to be gained so easily, isn't the real threat here potentially the Labour Party?
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't characterise the party opposite as a threat to democracy, but I think there might be a threat to sanity. I think we are all tested on a too regular basis by, I would say, fairly ridiculous statements that try to wedge and divide instead of coming together. And there's one thing about devolution, which is regardless of party politics, what we have seen in local areas across Labour, the Democrats and the Conservatives is that when it comes to the people and the place and putting communities first, party politics are put to one side, and I extend that invitation to the Reform Party too.
But they're panicking, folks. Look at this from Lewis Goodall of the fake news agents on seeing the picture of Farage alongside Elon Musk and Nick Candy. He wrote, "The lack of urgency from the government on updating electoral law to prevent a huge injection of Musk's money into British politics continues to surprise." He is literally advocating for a law to undermine Reform UK. That is threatening democracy. Reform's Rupert Lowe wrote furiously, "Cancelling elections is not acceptable and must not be considered. The people must have their say. There's your real threat to democracy, Harriet Harman." And Howard Cox added, "Cancelling the local council elections shows that communist dictator Starmer is scared of Reform's growing support and undoubted future success at the ballot box. He is running scared." And yes, he is. Yes, he is. And let me tell you, delaying the elections to 2026 or 2027 won't change a fundamental truth, which is that we are sick of being lied to and ready to smash the uni party. Using the same tropes that Kamala Harris tried and failed is true desperation. It will not work. Mark my words, Starmer will end up airlifted from Downing Street as the most unpopular post-war Prime Minister. But now, the outsider. Father Calvin, they're in meltdown. They're in total meltdown. The sight of Musk, Candy, and Farage is freaking them the hell out, to the point where you've got a journalist like Lewis Goodall, absolutely beloved on the left, literally suggesting a new law. A new law, Calvin. They always want to find a way to shut down the British people, don't they?
Lewis Goodall is a horrible man. I remember bumping into him outside News Corps when you'd just been suspended, and he was celebrating. Like, imagine celebrating a co-journalist being suspended from their job. Nasty, nasty person.
Yeah. But you know what, Calvin? He's not a journalist. He is an activist. And doesn't this post just prove it? He hates Elon Musk because Elon Musk is for free speech. Now, remember, this is a guy who is absolutely happy with the unions funding Labour. He's not suggesting that should change.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the thing. The left will continue to use this rhetoric now of they're going to disrupt our democracy. They're going to challenge our democracy. When they say that, and at the same time they're saying, actually, we need to stop these people from being funded, they are the ones who are going to undermine democracy. The left don't care about democracy. They care about themselves being in power. They want fellow lefties to be in power. They'll do anything they can to prevent other people from getting into positions of influence and power. Now, Nigel Farage and Reform, I have reservations about, but this news is amazing. To see Nick Candy, who is incredibly sound, and Elon Musk, who has been a warrior for free speech, to see them say, look, we're going to back this party, we're going to help potentially put some money into British politics, goes to show that people are taking an interest, a vested interest in the future of our country. And we're seeing the socialists literally dump our country left, right and centre. And I mean that literally, in that we're seeing them flogging off parts of the country. We're seeing them send people to prison for free speech and for free thought in some occasions with the silent prayer situation. So Labour are being abysmal for our land, and then there are people who are saying, "Look, we want to make a difference here," and the left are instantly saying, "We need to shut them down." It's quite fun to see this happening. I think if Elon Musk puts in a few million and Nick Candy puts in $1 million or so, then the shape of British politics for the next 4 years will be very, very different. This could be the thing that breaks the two-party system. We live in a uniparty. It's awful. No one likes the Conservatives. No one likes Labour, but we have no other choice. And so if we're offered another choice, things could change, finally.
And it needs to change. It needs to change. We need this fundamental change. But how hilarious, Calvin, that at the same time, all of these usual suspects are trying to suggest Farage is a threat to democracy, Reform UK is a threat to democracy. They are actually cancelling elections as if that's some sort of tin pot African dictator. God.
Like, what does democracy mean to these people when they say that something is a threat to democracy? They mean themselves. They think they are democracy. When they say reform is a threat to democracy, they mean reform is a threat to us. We have been threatened by reform. They're not democracy. If anything, the commies are the anti of democracy, the opposite of democracy. So let's get rid of them.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. I mean, goodness me, this is a really exciting time, I think, but it is also very interesting, Calvin, to see the lengths that they are going to go to. And we see this all the time, don't they? First they laugh, first they deride him. With Farage, it was trying to humiliate him. Oh, he only got into Parliament after attempting 6 goes. Never going to happen. Oh no, the Tories will come back. All of a sudden they're panicking. And so now what do they want to do? They want to shut him down. It's the same thing that Trump faced. It's the same thing Le Pen is currently facing in France. It's going to be fascinating to see the lengths they go to, the lawfare they will use, the government quangos that will be absolutely pushed forward. For example, the off-communists who will inevitably ban Farage from hosting his show on GB News. They're going to try everything. But the difference this time, Calvin, is I think it's too late. I think it's too late. I think we've had enough, because this country, mark my words, we are in such deep trouble that actually it's probably too late by 2029.
Yeah, it's time for a massive culture shift. Something does need to change, and we only have a few years to work this out. And so if there is no other major party to vote for, we're done. And this country will go down the pan. And so if Reform, maybe UKIP, Reclaim, if these parties on the right manage to get their act together, work together, if people on the right of politics manage to get some backing and some support, we could see things turn around for good.
I hope so. I hope so. The Uni Party has to be smashed. And what we need to do is ride the American wave. And there's lots of ways to do that, Father Calvin. Yes, Musk is one way. Yes, Trump is another way. But I'm inspired by what happened with the independent media. And for example, Tommy Robinson's Uniting the Kingdom movement is inspired by what happened with the Tea Party. There's lots of things we can do. One of the most critical things is that the right has to unite in some way, and we have to stand up together.
And I fully back Tommy Robinson. Like I say, I like Nick Candy, I like Elon Musk. It's good to see the powerful millionaires and billionaires backing reform, but unless reform can work with the lower guys, the common folk on the ground, in the grassroots, at the rallies, unless they can work with them, they have no hope. So I'm backing Tommy, and if reform reach out to Tommy and back Tommy too, then reform have a good shot. But if they don't, there are other options available.
Yes, and Father Calvin and I went to visit Tommy in prison on Saturday, and we had a very fond conversation about you while I was there. So he's very grateful for your, very grateful for your support.
How's he doing?
He's doing good, actually, surprisingly well, making plans, but of course, difficult. He's only really quite a short period in to the time he's going to spend behind bars. Because of course, Calvin, what they really want him to do is take down the film, take down Silenced, which started this all. And if he were to take down Silenced, he would receive a reduced sentence. He would be released early. But
really?
he's
So it's literally about
absolutely adamant he's not going to do that.
They don't even pretend anymore, do they?
Oh, no. And the police are visiting him all the time over some posts he made on X about Daily Mail journalists who had literally doxed him and revealed where he was staying in Cyprus. I mean, look, the establishment worked together on all of these things, but Tommy is very resolute about what he's going to do. His message to Reform UK, by the way, is just stop slagging me off and stop slagging off the Uniting the Kingdom movement. He's not even asking to be led into the party or have any formal role or anything like that. He understands he wants to lead a cultural movement while Reform UK lead a political movement, but he just wants the abuse to stop and that
so short-sighted
to stop.
I feel like Tommy is so ready to say, look, just back Reform, they're the only option that's available. I feel like he's so ready to say that, but they keep slagging him off at every opportunity, so he can't say that. It's so short-sighted.
Breaking right now, Humza Useless, the worst First Minister in Scottish history, and that's saying something given that nation was ruled with an iron fist by scheming Sturgeon for many years, has quit politics in a flurry of lies. This man, who was absolutely racist against the white people of Scotland, has thrown so much red meat to his hard left followers in the US. In this interview with Mehdi Hassan, where he announced this decision, I've decided that it is only right for Father Calvin Robinson and I to dissect exactly where he is making falsehoods, exactly where he is making totally false and defamatory claims about the people of Scotland. And by the way, the richest man in the world as well. So you could argue he's a little bit brave. But let's kick off with how Humza Useless, who I'll just repeat, is making the decision to stand down from frontline Scottish politics altogether after only lasting as First Minister for a year because he was so bad at the job. This is how he justifies that famous white speech.
After those riots, you said, and I quote, "I don't know whether the future for me and my wife and my 3 children is going to be here in Scotland or the United Kingdom or indeed in Europe and the West because of the rise of Islamophobia." A pretty damning statement coming from any public figure, let alone someone who was a Muslim elected to the highest office in Scotland. Do you really see yourself one day leaving the UK, even Europe, or was that a moment of emotion?
Look, first of all, let me be clear. I wouldn't ever want to leave Scotland. I love Scotland. I'm born and bred in Scotland, passionate about my country, the country I had the pleasure of leading as First Minister. My girls are all being raised and educated in Scotland. But if you ask any Muslim up and down the United Kingdom, do they think their family will be safe in the UK, practicing their faith, being who they are, identifying as Muslim, then I haven't found a single Muslim who believes that their family would 100% be safe in this country. That is conversations, multiple conversations I've had with families and friends, and I worry about the future for my girls. So look, I don't want to leave Scotland, but ultimately if I take my former First Minister hat off and put on the most important hat, which is that of a father, can I say my children will be safe in this country? Absolutely, for simply being who they are. And I don't think I can definitively say yes to that.
So Father Calvin immediately suggesting that a man who raised up the ranks despite being completely incompetent to the point where he became the First Minister of his nation, claiming that he's unsafe. Do you know what I think this guy's doing, Calvin? I think he wants an easy route out to one of the Middle Eastern nations, because why else would he deride his own people like that? It's disgusting.
Well, first of all, he's lying to say that he's not spoken to a single Mohammedan who would say they're not safe in the United Kingdom. There is no one safer in the United Kingdom than the Mohammedans. They are treated on a different level to the rest of us. They can get their rugs out and pray in the middle of the street and block traffic, and nothing will happen to them. Christians are getting arrested for silently praying in their own heads. The Mohammedans are pushing their Sharia law. They have their own legal system. Our legal system is arresting people for tweeting and Facebook comments. The Mohammedans are in the streets saying death to the Jews, and they're out there literally purporting genocide against an entire demographic of people, and nothing happens to them. Tommy Robinson tweets something about a journalist who's doxed him, and he's the one getting visits by the police in prison. It's like, if they can't see the two-tier system, that the Mohammedans are a protected characteristic in the United Kingdom, then he's a gaslighting liar. And actually, when he says he doesn't feel comfortable in the UK, I wish that was true, actually. I don't think Islam should be welcome in the United Kingdom. I don't think the Mohammedan faith should be welcome in the United Kingdom. I don't think we should have a Mohammedan leader of Scotland. The First Minister should be a Christian. It's a Presbyterian country, Scotland.
Yeah, but the point is, it's a democracy,
leader.
and he was. And
He
the
was
only
indeed.
reason he lost the job was because of absolute incompetence, both
His party are
politically
awful.
to manage it and also professionally, because in every portfolio he had failed. This was the moment, by the way, where he was challenged on the white speech. Watch.
Oh, good.
Populism, the rise of far-right populism we see in the UK, Europe, the West, and much of the world.
During all of that debate, you were actually accused of violating your own hate crime law when a clip of you from 2020 as a Justice Minister resurfaced in which you criticised Scotland's government for not having enough diversity, pointing out that the majority senior government officials in Scotland at that time were white.
We have to accept the reality and the evidence in front of us that Scotland has a problem of structural racism. When the most senior positions in Scotland are filled almost exclusively by those who are white. Take my portfolio alone. The Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white.
Of course, far-right trolls took that clip out of context and accused you of discriminating against white people. What is your reaction to that looking back?
I find it astonishing that those people who claim to be the champions of free speech demand that I get thrown into jail, get persecuted and prosecuted for stating out what is the very obvious, that far too many of our senior positions are not filled with people who are diverse or from our diverse communities. That is a statement of fact.
Far-right trolls. Okay, well, here we are, Calvin, because we were the people who were criticising it, right?
Yeah.
No, we didn't want you to be locked up. We just called out the fact that you are racist. Because in your 90% white country, you are horrified by the fact that 90% of white people hold 90% of the jobs.
Yes, and not only that, not only did he say it's a problem that there aren't enough diverse people, as he calls them, which he essentially means non-white, because he's made that very clear. He said the country is structurally racist, and we know this because the most people in these positions are white. Now, having white people in positions of power and influence in a country that is predominantly white is not proof of racism. Racism is discrimination or prejudice that would be preventing brown people from getting positions. Brown people aren't prevented from getting positions. He is an example of that. He rose to the very top of the political hierarchy in Scotland. So there is no structural racism. He is the racist by saying that to prove that you're not racist, you need more people that look like me. Would he say that Japan is structurally racist, China is structurally racist, Iran is structurally racist? Every other country around the world is allowed to have people who are predominantly of the ethnic makeup of the main demographic of the country. That's not proof of racism. That's just natural order. That's just, of course, if a country is predominantly white, most people will be white. That's what predominantly means. He is the racist.
But also, it's absolutely insane, Calvin, because there he was delivering that speech while a senior minister in the government, he would end up becoming First Minister, looking over to the leader of the Scottish opposition, an Asian man called Anas Sanwa. It really doesn't feel like structural racism to me. But this interview descended, Calvin. It actually got worse because he accused Elon Musk of causing so-called race riots in the UK. Now, my God, how lovely would it be for Elon Musk to just sue this guy? Watch.
And if he is trying to emulate that influence in the next UK general election, that should, as I say, ring alarm bells right up and down the country.
Do you think he contributed to the race riots in the summer?
I don't doubt it for a minute. Of course he did. He amplified disinformation, which, by the way, a 10-second Google search would have told you that information was not true and was inaccurate. What he chose to do was purposely amplify it, and that undoubtedly lit the fuse for some of the race riots that we saw in Southport in the summer.
He's a dishonest man. He's a very dishonest man. I dislike him for that reason. He's nasty and dishonest. First of all, painting people who question him as far right is the tactic of Keir Starmer. But then to paint Elon Musk as perpetuating these race riots. Firstly, they weren't even race riots. There were protests, some of which turned violent because people were upset and angry. And Elon Musk had nothing to do with those protests. What happened was the establishment covered up the situation surrounding the murder of 3 British girls, and the British public deserve the right to know, to ask questions, to have transparency. And when the establishment cover things like that up, of course they get upset. Of course some of those upset people get angry, and of course some of the protests turn violent. That's bound to happen. The problem here isn't Elon Musk, it's the establishment and the politicians like him.
And I did like that post that we just saw on X from Alex Armstrong, Humza Useless resignation paper. White. He just hates the whiteys, doesn't he, Calvin? He wants to get away from us all. I think this one will probably make you most angry, though. As I say, this was an extraordinary interview, like a tissue of lies. It's almost like he'd been taking tips from Meghan Markle when she was speaking to Oprah Winfrey. But this actually just shows his true authoritarian nature. Humza Useless is calling for the British government to officially classify Tommy Robinson's organisation as a terrorist organisation.
A Hindu prime minister and a Muslim first minister. You also had these horrific race riots this summer in parts of the UK, which many believe were spurred in part by far-right conspiracy theorists and extremists like Tommy Robinson, founder of the EDL, the English Defence League. You tried to hold him and his group accountable by calling on the UK Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, from the Labour Party, to formally classify his group as a terrorist organisation, which they haven't done yet. What is the case for doing that, and why do you think Labour haven't done it?
So I can't answer why Labour haven't done it. You'd have to get a Labour politician on here to ask why. I think they're probably scared of the reaction that they'll get. They know that some of those who associate with Tommy Robinson might well peel off to other political parties like Reform, who are seen as major challengers in the next general.
Do you think Labour don't take Islamophobia seriously enough? There was that argument made during the summer that ministers...
They certainly don't take Islamophobia seriously enough. That's pretty clear, I think, from a range of actions. But when it comes to the race riots that we saw in Southport, not only were they amplified by Tommy Robinson, they were, of course, amplified by people who have sympathies with the far right and white supremacy, like Elon Musk with his hundreds of millions of followers.
That's libelous.
And what you have is an undercurrent, but what was an undercurrent of institutional Islamophobia and societal Islamophobia.
Yeah, but the problem is, Calvin, as soon as you start undermining Nazism and white supremacy to that degree, you have completely lost the argument. I mean, this guy, he's the dangerous one, actually. But what's your reaction to him wanting to classify Tommy Robinson and his supporters as terrorists?
Well, I can answer the question that he couldn't answer. The reason that the Labour government hasn't classified the English Defence League as a terrorist organisation is because it does not exist and hasn't existed for nearly a decade. There is no EDL. So he's just insane to try and blame the EDL. But the worst thing is that Tommy put out videos almost on a daily basis saying, do not riot, do not get violent. He doubled down in be polite, be civil. If you want to march in protest, that's your right as a British citizen to protest and make your voice heard, but don't turn violent because they will use it against us. Tommy Robinson was speaking against rioting every single day. So for someone like him to sit there and say, well, Elon Musk is tweeting disinformation and spreading misinformation, and at the same time do that very thing himself, he's disingenuous, he's dishonest, he's a nasty little liar. And when he said the Labour Party doesn't focus on Islamophobia enough, another lie. One of the first things our Prime Minister did was sit down with the Mayor of London and say, how can we tackle Islamophobia more? It's one of their obsessions. I think this country isn't Islamophobic enough. I think Islam is a danger. We talk about dangerous threats to democracy. Islam is a threat to democracy. It's a threat to our very way of life. It's a horrible ideology. And I have no problem with people who are Muslim, but I have a problem with the Islamic faith. And so, separating the sin from the sinner, as we always should. But Islamophobia is not a crime, and it shouldn't be. To have a fear or to have a recognition that Islam is dangerous and hostile to women, to young girls in Britain, as we've seen over the last few decades, to free speech, to democracy. Recognizing those things does not make you a hateful person, but he is the hateful person in that every single time he sees someone challenge him, he paints them as a white supremacist. I'm clearly not white. I'm clearly not a white supremacist. I do not like Humza Useless. I think he is a racist troll.
Very well put, Father Calvin Robinson. Very well put. I don't disagree with a word of it. Breaking right now, civil war in the Labour Party. Yes, hallelujah. It's happened already. Slippery Starmer has been so unpopular that already there are two factions emerging in the party of government. On one side, you have Angela Rayner and the hard lefties. On the other, you have Wes Streeting and the Blairites. Both want Starmer out, and I think realistically he will have to go before the next election. Andrew Marr, the number one journalist when it comes to reporting inside the Labour Party, given he is a far left guy himself, is horrified by this, but watch his revelations here.
I know of at least one, and I think two, covert one-day leadership campaigns already being put together. And I think, given where Labour are in the polls, it is possible to think ahead into next year. Imagine sort of by the early summer, imagine they've had really, really tough, bad local election results. They shouldn't because of the cycle, but imagine it's really bad in terms of their raw numbers. Imagine Keir Starmer's personal ratings are even lower than they are at the moment, and a mood of panic starts to spread among Labour MPs. They're quite good at panicking, not as good as Tory MPs, but they can do it pretty effectively.
They're not as ruthless as the Tories.
They're not as ruthless there. I think it is not impossible that we start to see factional manoeuvring and, personal ambition starting to surface in the cabinet around about then. Now, if it's a fight between, on the one hand, Morgan McSweeney running Team Keir and anybody else, I would still back Morgan McSweeney to win. Nonetheless, I think there is the possibility of severe turbulence ahead. And, there is a group of very, very powerful, probably they've got the intellectual edge at the moment, the Blairites. And I'm thinking of people like Wes Streeting and lots of his allies, Liz Kendall being one of his allies and stuff, inside, the reformers inside government. And there is the soft left, who would probably gather, as it were, under the Angela Rayner banner these days, I think. But Louise Hay would certainly be part of that instinct. And I just really, really hope they don't go to war with each other. Because if that happens, then I think the British public will say, they're exactly like the Tories. They're obsessed with each other. Here we go again. Here we go again. What about...
Father Calvin, it's about to kick off.
What is it that Andrew Marr said when the Labour Party won? The grown-ups are back in the room. The country's going to be great again. What an activist, and how wrong he was. But we knew this was going to happen. The Labour Party have been in civil war for a long time now. You've got the far left Corbynites on one end. You've got the Blairites on the centre of the party. And so they hate each other. They have completely different ideologies, and they have different expectations on how to run the country. And so of course they're going to be fighting each other. It's great to see it, and if it implodes, fantastic. If it means we have another general election, great, let's go for it.
Where do you think the party will go, though? Because I think for all of the talk of Wes Streeting, actually, and it's quite a terrifying thought, the most likely next Prime Minister of the UK, she won't be elected, but the next Prime Minister to take Labour into the election will be Angela Rayner. Seriously.
Oh, she's thick as two short planks. It's
totally,
not possible.
But I think it will be the left of the party that has supremacy.
I mean, I can't see how Angela Rayner could win an election. But if she gets handed the rein while they're still in power, I don't think that would be good for the country. But saying that, I can't think of anyone worse than commie sociopath Keir Starmer. Even Corbyn, I don't think would be worse than Keir Starmer. So actually, I don't really care who replaces Keir when they stab him in the back, which they probably will.
And Calvin, it keeps on falling apart because look at this latest piece of breaking news. This is in regards to the terrible Chagos Island deal. The new Prime Minister of Mauritius says the deal struck by Keir Starmer isn't good enough, and he wants to reopen talks. He rejects current terms as they would not produce the benefits that the nation could expect. And of course, this comes as Trump risks blocking the deal. So he can't even get that right, Calvin.
I despise that our politicians want to give away our territories and our nation and our Commonwealth. It's like, what little we have left, they want to just get rid of it. It's disgusting. I would say no. And I think if Keir does manage to find a way to split our empire up even more, we should hold him to account as a traitor to the realm. It's very sad what we're seeing, and it's not just, of course, it's not just the islands that are under consideration. It's things like Royal Mail, which should be a British institution. It should be nationalised, and this is someone that's not a leftist saying this. You know, it used to be the way that we understood that in the Mail it was owned by the Queen until it was delivered to the person, because it was part of our infrastructure. It wasn't a private limited or a public limited company. It certainly wasn't owned by Johnny Foreigner. And the fact that the Labour Party want to allow this institution to be sold to a foreign person in a foreign country is baffling to me. But at the same time, they want to give away islands and territories. And like, what will be left of Great Britain by the end of this Labour government?
Well, I know. That is what I think about every day, Calvin, because I really do worry that it's getting too late. Certainly when it comes to the mass immigration, the demographic change, I really, really worry it is too late. Father Calvin, the other thing that infuriates me is that this is a student politics government with Ed Miliband running around like a fool, literally destroying our economy, literally about to plunge us into bankruptcy. But it's the arrogance he has, because you'll remember that for the entire administration of Boris Johnson, they went after every little detail, every little spend that was made, and we were promised that it was going to be different. Look at his complete arrogance here when Nick Ferrari on LBC calls him out for it.
Pounds to the government since you came into power for offices to be redecorated and have new furniture. Of the £130,000, £43,000 has gone to the Net Zero Department, DESNZ. What's it paid for, Mr. Miliband?
Well, I've no idea, Nick.
So you've been in receipt of £43,000 of £130,000.
Honestly, come on, honestly, you know, look, I'm worrying about the nation's energy system. I'm trying to get the nation's energy system right. I don't know.
You're not aware of this refurbishment?
No, I'm not.
Have you got a new chair? Have you got because many ministers and secretaries of state have had new chairs. Some have had new TVs. So you don't know where the £43,000 has gone.
No, I don't. I'm happy to find out and get back to you.
Aren't you rather disturbed by that?
Have my people call your people.
Well, no, please do. Aren't you rather disturbed by that? As you quite rightly, you want to get growth going. You promised, and your colleague Rachel Reeves promised she'd have an iron fist to Whitehall spending. You don't know where 43 grand's gone, Mr. Miliband.
I think, to be honest, Nick, let's have a grown-up conversation.
I think 43 grand missing is quite grown up.
Calvin Robinson, they never wanted to have a grown-up conversation, Father Calvin, when it was the last administration, so it's complete hypocrisy.
Yeah, and it's not that he wants a grown-up conversation. He wants to change the subject. And he probably does know where that money has gone, or at least he should know. If he doesn't know, he's irresponsible as a minister and should resign. But if he does know where it is, he's kind of trying to cover it up and hide it, because they're splashing. It's our money that they're splashing around and wasting. And if they're giving it to these companies that are saying, oh, it's for net zero, this and that, the other, what does that mean? Who gets the money that it's paid? When it's paid to these consultancies and these agencies, where does the money go from there? Does it ever come back into the hands of any of our politicians, is the question Nick Ferrari should be following up with.
And there's another betrayal. Calvin, look at this today about the WASPy women. So in 2019, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, said that the WASPy women had their pensions stolen and that Labour will compensate them. It's their money, she said. Well, today, they've said absolutely not. They're not getting any money, as Dan Hodges, not someone I usually agree with, but there he is from the Mail on Sunday saying, I don't understand how Labour think they can get away with this. It's another broken promise, Calvin.
They don't care. I mean, they lied and lied and lied, and they got elected based on those lies. And now they're in, they don't care. They'll do whatever they want, and there's no one that can hold them to account. Nothing will happen, and they are seeing that. They can just do, they're running roughshod over our nation, spending our money, giving away our islands, cancelling our institutions, spending money on themselves, and what can we do about it? We're stuck. It's disgusting. It's a mess. And for Angela Rayner to be saying that after she campaigned so hard and made such a bold point, almost as if the government was stealing the money off these waspies, and now that she is the government, to say that it's not going to happen and that money is not going to be given to them, how dare she?
How dare she indeed. Father Calvin Robinson, do stand by. Back with you in just 1 minute to discuss this explosive feud between the complete vile, degenerate, what's her name? Marina Purkiss versus Jacob Rees Mogg's sister. But first, winter is coming. In fact, I feel it's here, to be honest, because it's really cold. And that means cold and flu season is here too. Viruses thrive in cold, dry air, and our immune responses weaken in colder temperatures. I used to get sick often during these months, but I've avoided the flu all year and recover much faster when I do get a little cold. You've heard me talk about Verso before. I've been taking it for months now, and their products have greatly improved my immunity, especially Clean Being. It's made with research-backed ingredients that boost your body's defense systems to fight off viruses when you get introduced to them, preventing you from getting sick in the first place. A strong immune response isn't just about fighting off illness, but also managing your body's reaction afterward. Inflammation helps protect against viruses, but too much can cause pain, tissue damage, and slow recovery. Clean Being manages inflammation, keeping your body balanced so it fights sickness effectively without extra problems. This reduces pain and swelling, protects tissues, and prevents overreactions. After taking Clean Being for some time, I don't get sick as often, recover quickly, and have an improved mental state. Click the link in the description in YouTube or Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so and use the coupon code Outspoken at checkout to save 15% on your first order. I'll just repeat the address: www.buy.ver.so/outspoken and use the coupon code Outspoken. But now, back to the show. Sometimes the lefty shows their true colours because they feel so safe in the mainstream media, so safe to express their hate in a way that actually would make them completely rejected in mainstream society. I really have a belief that when it comes to one's family members, if you're face to face with a human being, you leave them alone, unless there is a very good reason to be completely horrible. But this vile left-wing troll, Marina Purkiss, and she is a troll, by the way. You just see the anger in her because she only ever expresses negativity. Went on the Jeremy Vine show where she felt very comfortable and was face-to-face with the loveliest woman. I know her very, very well, Annunziata Rees Mogg, proud sister of Jacob Rees Mogg. This is what happened.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's actually been cancelled. It's not going to have another series. It's had disastrously low ratings.
Has
and
it?
I think that's good, because I think I'm so sick of the media, whether it's that or I'm a celeb, sanitising people who have harmed the country.
But he has made a lot of money on his own terms.
Great for him. How have the rest of the country fared?
Annunziata, it's got, as you can see, it's taken a turn here.
I think it's unfortunate that Marina is quite so anti my brother. I personally find him a fantastic brother, and I think a very principled and values-led politician who wants the best for the country.
And she didn't let up. It kept going.
Some people to be, and Boris Johnson would be in this category as well, to be sort of mainly entertainers, as Jacob Rees Mogg is.
No, and sorry, I disagree. I'm sorry. Principles-led. The man who advocated for Brexit and then moved his business away from the country. The man who lied to people about getting cheaper food, cheaper bills, cheaper everything, and none of it's materialised.
And we've just signed
a guy who literally
a trade deal with a bigger trading bloc than the EU, so that we can do exactly that.
Tell your viewers, tell our
the
viewers.
Remainers like Keir Starmer who tried to thwart Brexit, who prevented us having any benefits.
Speak across here.
Tell
Marina,
our viewers,
you go
you
first.
just mentioned the trade deal. Tell our viewers how the UK is going to benefit from that. How much from that CPTPP trade deal is this country going to benefit?
Let her answer.
So it is forecast to be in the billions, but the important thing is...
1.8 billion.
The important thing is...
1/50th of what we've lost.
Let her answer.
Their growth has been averaging and forecast to continue averaging 8% a year. The EU's is forecast to fall by 8%.
Annunziata,
we
prior
need
to that
be
trade
trading
deal,
with the successful countries, not the failing ones.
And even though Annunziata was polite, respectful, and most importantly, truthful, there were more lies and more venom to come from revolting Purkiss.
You know
That's
that.
completely not
How's it going to benefit our viewers?
Why has Europe got maternity rights? I worked in Brussels and I had no maternity rights at all. I could have got 6 weeks in total and I wouldn't have been paid for all of that. It's Britain that has the stronger rights than most of the EU.
But if you share
on our own,
your brother doesn't
need...
even want there to be holiday leave. He doesn't believe. He didn't vote for.
You're
He doesn't want
making stuff up,
he
Marina.
Said there's video evidence.
Keep talking
there's video
over me.
evidence of him saying it's not a given right.
We will properly discuss.
Now, I know what this is all about. Marina Purkiss did this for social media clout, so she posted the video on social media. Remembering, by the way, this is a woman who took money to come into GB News and be interviewed by Jacob Rees-Mogg, where she walked around like she owned the place. Such an unpleasant individual. But Annunziata Rees Mogg, in response to Marina Purkiss's tweet, which went viral in the end for all of the wrong reasons, said, for the sake of accuracy, Marina's opening line was attacking my brother. Debate the facts, not the family. Sophie Corcoran weighed in, saying Marina is without doubt one of the most condescending, disrespectful, and certainly snobby people on TV. Annunziata should be very proud of the way she handled her, a classy lady. And Paula London wrote, Purkiss needs to stay in lane, the loser's lane. She only despises Jacob Rees-Mogg as he is brighter and more eloquent than her. He schooled her on his GB News show and she was embarrassed. It was hilarious. Carol Malone schooled her too on the Jeremy Vine show. Poor woman was out of her depth. And the thing is, Father Calvin, look, Marina Purkiss can be a nasty individual if she wants to. I'm not suggesting that she should be booted off the show or anything like that. But I do think we should call out this complete toxicity that comes from the left. Because remember, this mob, and this mob also includes Carol Vorderman, James O'Brien, are always the ones that are calling for more civility in politics. And then you get a display like that.
Oh my goodness. You know what? Watching that back, Dan, it made me so relieved that I no longer work in the mainstream media. It made me so relieved that I'm no longer on those panels on GB News. We've got that mouthy left. They will shout over because they can't debate. They can't have a genuine conversation about the points because they know they'll lose. So they have to shout over you or attack you. The way that she was attacking Annunziata, and I've known Annunziata for years. She's a lovely woman. She's not even very much like her brother, but she's a lovely person. To attack Annunziata over Jacob Rees-Mogg's stance, again, is just dishonest and disingenuous, which they always are. Like, if you have a problem with Jacob Rees-Mogg, then challenge Jacob Rees-Mogg, right? Not his sister. If someone attacked my sister over things that I'd said, I would be very unhappy with them because my sister is not me. We share some similarities, sure, but we don't agree on everything, and nor does Annunziata agree with everything that Jacob Rees-Mogg does or says. And so you're right, that Marina was looking for hits. She was looking for social media clout. That's all she ever does. She's loud. She's just brass. And actually, I don't know why anyone bothers to invite her onto their show because she's not even entertaining. It's hard to watch that kind of thing. I've never been comfortable with these lefties that just screech and scream over other people. I want to hear a debate. I want to hear a conversation. She's not capable of that.
No, but she's not capable of it because I don't think she has the brains to do it, Calvin, because she's one of these people who has come up from nowhere and been embraced because let's just be honest about it, Calvin. She's a troll. That's all that woman is. She's a troll.
A paid troll, and there are so many of these paid trolls. And the problem with the mainstream media cycle or the legacy media cycle is that they keep getting these same people on because they know they'll get some hits. They don't care that they're trolls. They don't care that it doesn't help the public conversation. It doesn't progress the debate at all. They just want the traffic, the revenue, the viewers, and it's sad, really. We're better than that.
Yeah, I think we should be better than that. But that's one of the reasons, Calvin, that I love being independent. I love no longer having the off-communists telling me what to do, because I hated what I would describe as a false equivalence. You have to have some insane lefty on every panel to provide some sort of faux balance, when in fact what they're doing is such a turn-off. Who wants to listen to a woman like that, in all seriousness?
Careful now, that wording sounds very similar to the mess with who got us into this position in the first place.
Well, there's a lot of men like that too, if I'm completely honest. I mean, who wants to listen to someone like Benjamin Butterworth, who I used to be forced to have on my previous show? Like, in all seriousness.
I know, nobody, which is why nobody does.
Yeah. Indeed. Indeed. Oh, Father Calvin, so brilliant to have you. Thank you very much for your company, and I think I will see you next. I'm very excited about this. On Christmas Day. In fact, Calvin, we've just got to very quickly tell people what we're doing on Christmas Day, because we know that it can be a difficult time for some people. For some people, it can be quite a lonely time. We wanted to still have a show on Christmas Day. And so what we're going to do, and this is all chosen by the Outspoken viewers, the members of the Dan Wootton Outspoken Club on X. And what Calvin and I are going to do is count down your choice of the top 10 greatest Britons of 2024. And what's amazing about this, Calvin, we're going to have no idea as the countdown comes in. So we're completely blind to who the Outspoken viewers have chosen. I obviously have a couple of ideas of people who I hope are on the list, but this is your list rather than our list. And we're going to do the countdown at the normal time on Christmas Day. And I'm really looking forward to that, Calvin.
This is amazing. You're bringing the greatest Britain back. This is what the people have been asking for. Yes.
Well, yes, of course, because the background is I launched Greatest Britain Union Jackass on my GB News show, and they decided to keep going with it, which I found quite bizarre. But we have our own rival, alternative, original version on the Dan Wootton Outspoken Club, run, by the way, by the brilliant moderators of that club, who I want to give a little shout out to: Michael Cass, Darren Donaldson, Karen Hankey, Anna Ireland. Go and join the club. It's absolutely amazing. The most sound place, I like to say, on X. But Father Calvin, I'm really looking forward to seeing you Christmas Day. I'm sure you must have such a busy period, right, up until then?
It's the busiest time of year for all clergy. I will be exhausted, but I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have a very special Christmas, so I'll see you then.
Is it your first American Christmas?
Actually, it will be. And I'm not going to be alone. My father's going to come over for Christmas, so I'll have
lovely.
some family here. And I'll have some parishioners around as well on Christmas Day. We'll have a nice American Christmas lunch. So we'll have I think we're having a Christmas ham, as they call it here, right? I'm used to turkey, so that'll be a bit of a change. But I love church at Christmas. It's the most special time to be in church. I'm looking forward to I've got services every single day. Christmas Eve, I've got 2. I've got Christmas Day, the day after that, the day after that, the day after that. And so if people are looking for somewhere to be over Christmas, come to church.
Exactly. Go to church. If you're feeling lonely, go and see what time your local church is hosting a service on Christmas Day, because you never feel lonely at church. There's really something special about that, especially on Christmas Day. So, Father Calvin, thank you so much for today. I will see you on Christmas Day. Really, really looking forward to that. But coming up today, our wonderful royal mastermind, Angela Levin, is here to reveal the growing storm over Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's Christmas card, with these claims that it's been digitally manipulated. You know, it's very important to me that we have a safe space not patrolled by big tech where censorship and control runs deep. So that's why we have www.outspoken.live, our membership section, where you will get a half hour of extra content every single weekday. So at this stage, we come off YouTube and Rumble, move to the Substack platform to continue our conversation in the uncancelled after show. You can sign up at www.outspoken.live. It is absolutely possible, by the way, to register for free, become part of the community for free. It's really important to me that you do so. The problem with big tech platforms is I have no way to communicate with you directly if I'm cancelled again. So please, www.outspoken.live. It's really important that you sign up. Back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Do hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and Rumble. Most importantly, as you know, I promise to keep fighting for you, but I will see you on the after show in just one moment with Angela Levin.